Guys, welcome. So first off, my grandmother was named Etta. So I'm thanking her for moving this thing offshore before we started this afternoon. Nice to have a check-in with her. And then the other thing, for those of you that know me, this is my first shot at No Shave November. So I just dipped a toe in. I couldn't go the whole furry face thing. My baby brother has gotten a clear from having cancer diagnosed 2 years ago. So I'm celebrating with the Men's Health Month thing. So we'll see whether this thing sticks or not. I'm not sure my wife loves it, so it probably won't. I'm going to see if Tammy's there. Tammy, you there? Well, she was a few minutes ago. And
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Yay! Good. Well,
I'm just trying to keep it on mute.
Okay, that's great. You've been so patient. I didn't really want to start without you. So guys, you've got handouts and stuff. About a year ago, I realized portability was going to be really important for us and in the real estate practice. So I figured somebody had to develop some expertise on it, and it better be me or somebody else would. So congrats for taking your time to be here. So rhetorically, why are you here? I think you're here because you want your clients or customers to value you as an expert, and people are starting to know about portability. It was on the recent ballot, as you know, and I'll talk about that a little bit today, and it saves them money. So I've found in my 35 years of practicing law, if I have business or real estate clients and I save or make them money, they usually remember my name and come back to me. So hopefully today's session is going to put you in a position to do that too. We are being recorded. This will be available live. So one thing I ask everybody that attends all of my workshops is an agreement that there are no bad questions except ones we leave unasked. So I want you to ask any question. If you want to do that anonymously, or if you want to do it after we turn the video off, that's cool too. But if I don't explain something well, please ask it, because I want everybody to leave here with at least a rudimentary understanding of what portability is about. Most of you know that in addition to real estate, I practice in estate planning and business law. So in my opinion, those all go together with portability, because portability is saving people taxes, which is what the estate planning is about. And a lot of it can be with homesteads, of course, and a lot of my business owners are concerned about that. So I think, congratulations, you guys work in the American dream. Why? We're the first country that ever allowed common people to own a home. And I really think that home ownership is the basic building block of the American dream. So here's what we do to make people take what they've earned in their first home or second home or third home onto the next one. So there is math and there's taxes in this next, say, 40 minutes. You took the time to be here. My job is to make you not regret that. So congratulations on doing it. There are two essential tax codes in the U.S., and that's one for the informed and one for the uninformed, right, guys? So I just had a couple this week. I was trying to think if it was the end of last week or this week, that had never applied for their homestead exemption just because he was lazy and couldn't get around to it, and he admitted it was stupid. And I took the opportunity to say, you know, if you'd done that, if they were selling a home, moving to a new home, so they will not be able to port their tax advantage from that first residence onto the second one. It follows you as long as you are a resident and homeowner in Florida, okay? So we want to make our customers informed, and I'll tell you candidly, I've heard from some brokers that they consider it an obligation to advise your sellers about what portability might be available to them. So we're going to help you do that at the end of this. As I promised, we've got a piece that we'll be delighted to co-brand with you that you can just hand out that kind of tells them what they're in for. So we have to focus a little bit. It's not easy stuff. But if you fail to inform your sellers about portability, the best case scenario is Like this guy that I had this week that never did file for his homestead exemption. They're going to be mad at you, right? Not use you again. The worst case scenario is their lawsuits being filed saying, why didn't you inform me about this way back when? So that's why the brokers like us to teach this subject. This is the fun part of the session, I think, portability. And this is to help you remember what it is. I like to break it down a little bit. Portability. What's port? Start with the easy one. It's a very sweet wine from Portugal. Everybody's got that one down, right? It's a town or a harbor like Port Royal. We can all be pirates when we think of Port Royal, the pirate capital. So what's a port do? A port ships things out. It's the opposite of starboard. Any boating people? That's the left facing forward on a boat. It's an opening for the passage of steam, liquid, or gas, like an exhaust port. And for computer nerds, the word means to transport software. It's the socket in a computer that you plug your device into, a port, right? So if you're military, and I like to add this one, especially just had Veterans Day, and I have a lot of veterans in my family tree. It is to carry a rifle or other weapon diagonally across and close to your body with the barrel or blade near the left shoulder. That's porting. I never knew that. So when you see parade formation, that's what those people are doing. So, or to carry a boat between navigable waters, portage. So when you think of port, we think of transporting or carrying something from one place to another. Ability, much simpler, much less fun than starting out with a sweet wine, is the skill to do something or talent or proficiency. So when we put them together, it's the ability to easily carry something from one spot to the other. So in this case, it's the ability to easily carry a tax benefit from one Florida homestead to another, okay? So what did we just say? It's got to be homestead, right? It's homestead to homestead, and it's in Florida. Somebody's moving for our halfbacks, right? They come down from the Northeast, and then they decide they want to go to Tennessee or North Carolina. Portability is irrelevant because the second residence isn't Florida. They cannot port from a homestead into that rental property they're going to want to work with, okay? So I'm going to say this 2 or 3 different ways because it's not really easy, and I hope at least one of them resonates with each of you. So first, we need to start out with the Save Our Homes Amendment to the Florida Constitution, which occurred in 1995. That is the amendment that is now ensconced in our Constitution, just like our homestead exemptions, to limit annual increases in the assessed value of property, the homestead exemption, right? That's the one everybody wants to talk about. File your homestead exemption so your taxes don't go up more than a certain amount. It is either 3% or the change in the consumer price index, whichever is lower. I went and looked it up, and it's often been the consumer price index has been lower. So the limitation of the increase in Florida home value for taxation purposes has been less than 3%, which is pretty golden, right? You guys are in the business. We all know that most of our properties are increasing far more than that. So the portability refers to the ability of the property owner to transfer some or all of that Save Our Homes benefit to the next home. The portability statute was passed in 2008. So you had 2005 Save Our Homes. And those of you guys been into Vol a long time, remember we kind of had an informal, it was almost like an agreement between the property appraiser and the citizens that they wouldn't raise ours up more than 3. But we always thought back then, gosh, they could do it whenever they wanted. They didn't, and then we got a constitutional amendment that put that one worry to rest. So in 2008, they said, okay, wait, we have residents who want to upsize as they're growing their family, doing well, or on the other end, maybe empty nesters want to downsize. And whoever they are, we want to allow them to port that tax benefit that they have gained to their new home. So what is that? It's the difference between the assessed value, which as we know is set and then can only grow no more than 3% a year, and the market value of a homestead property. All right, and the handouts have these definitions in it, so they'll be right there for you to refer to. The flyer that I want to give you at the end also will have that, so you can very easily hand it to someone. They'll have it as a reference. We found that people that come to closings and have this question love walking out with that in their hand. So the assessed value is set. The value can only raise 3% or less a year, while in Florida, the real value of the property, the fair market value, is going up. And the value that's going to be ported is the difference, okay? The property assessor does set what that value is. It is also possible to contest that if you feel that they have unfairly set the fair market value at the end. I would argue that it would be set by what's fair market value, the amount between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an arm's length transaction, right? So if you've got a sale price and that seller has more than the amount the tax assessor wants to give them, that can be challenged. I don't personally do that work, but we can refer out to lawyers who like to go down and argue with those boards, and there are lawyers that make a practice of that. So we call that the Save Our Homes benefit or Save Our Homes savings. So the first year a home receives a homestead exemption in Florida, the property appraiser assesses what they call just value. And really just value is a value that the property appraiser sets. We have found over time that's approximately 70% of what we might think of as fair market value. The reason I believe they do that is if they set it just below real market value like that, they get fewer people challenging it, right? So they're trying to pick a value that most citizens will accept as the fair market value. With that in mind, in each of the following years, the assessed value, the just value, or the assessed value over that just value cannot go up more than that 3% or the consumer price index. That little 3% or consumer price index is called the assessment limitation, all right? So then the seller can transfer her Save Our Homes benefit to the new house if she had the homestead exemption on her old home in either of the 2 tax rolls preceding the year for which the new one's established. Now that's just changed in this election, so we're going to go over that in a few minutes. Either the new law is going to make it a whole nother year that people have the ability to get it done into the new house, because if you miss it, if you fail to file, you've lost it forever, right? That's just as dumb as the guy, I won't say that he's dumb, but the action he took was of not ever filing the homestead on their previous resident. And he looked right at his wife and said, "Yep, I'm stupid." Well, you're not stupid necessarily, but that wasn't a really smart thing to do economically. So the homestead has to have been established, and you have a certain amount of time within to do it. Now, while the property owner may file for portability in later years, the homestead exemption on the new property must be established within 2 years of abandoning the old one, right? So you could keep your old residence and turn it into a rental property while establishing the next home as your new residence and port that difference in between. So if the new homestead, the new house, is of equal or greater value, this is the upsizing, right? Then the old homestead, the homeowner may port up to $500,000 in capped value on their new homestead. So that gets pretty easy, right? What is the new just value? And then they port that entire amount up to $500,000 to the new house. And that's on your sheet. If the new homestead is of lesser value, the downsizing example, right? Then the old homestead, it's a percentage of the accumulated benefit that can be transferred. In other words, you can't take the full amount to make it go all the way down to 0 or a negative amount. It's going to be a percentage of that amount. So the amount is either transferred in its entirety or as a percentage, depending on the value of the new property, and you can never port more than $500,000. So I think the philosophy behind that was we're only going to allow the higher wealth people to get $500,000 off the value of that new mansion rather than a greater value than that. So one more time, upsizing, if the just value of the new homestead's more than the previous home's just value, the entire benefit can be transferred. Downsizing, it's going to be a percentage. And I've given you an example in the handout of how the downsize is calculated. And I used to take an extra 10 minutes in this speech and go through it. But instead of having to continue to do that, we hired a programmer, and we now have a portability calculator on our website. And I played around with it, and it works, and it's really pretty cool. So if you go to rocksolidlaw.com and you go to the real estate tab under the services we have, there's going to be estate planning, real estate, and business law. And go to that page, there's a big button that says portability calculator. And all you have to do when you go there is to fill in the market value of the existing home when they're selling, and then the assessed value, then the market value of the new home, and then it's whether it's somebody that's single or it's a couple, right? Because it's going to calculate the $25,000 or $50,000 as well. What that'll show you in the bottom half of the calculator, and anybody can use this, you can send your customers and clients there as well. It'll show you the portability benefit, right? If it's up to if they're upsizing, that's going to be the same number, up to $500,000 and capped out at $500,000. If it's downsizing, it's going to show a percentage of that. And then it's going to show the assessed value of the new one with the standard exemptions, $25,000 or $50,000. And it will show you the estimated taxable value of the new property, which helps them evaluate what their taxes are going to be. Of course, I got some disclaimers at the bottom right. If somebody really wants me to go through the calculation with them to make sure they use it right and stand by our work, I'd be glad to do that. But there are just too many human variables to let just anybody use it and me stand by it. So the update, sure everybody noticed we just had an election, right? In Florida, we had, as we always do, all those constitutional amendments. Number 5 was with respect to portability. So by 74.49%, this passed. So it got a huge acceptance rate among Florida voters. And that's that it moves the time to port the portability value from 2 years to 3 years. Now, this is really important. It's not from the date of sale, okay? It's no matter when you close in a given year, it relates back to January 1 of that year. So what this new law, in my opinion, is doing, and as somebody who closes this time of year, right, they would have only had about a year and a month to be able to identify the new house, get their portability filed for, and all of that. So now that person would have it for 2, and somebody that closes early in the year is going to have nearly 3 years to make their application. So I think that's a real positive for Florida homeowners. I mean, in my opinion, and I grew up in St. Petersburg where we had an elderly population, a lot of folks that have lived in Florida a long time, their homes gain so much value, and even though they may have paid their mortgage off, that they can't do the taxes with their fixed income. So they could move to a smaller or less expensive house, taking all of their tax credits for portability with them, and find a home that they can find affordable, stay in it, and live their retirement years. I think that's why the Save Our Homes was originally put in as well. We wanted to cap how much those folks were going to have to pay taxes on. It's the long-term Florida resident who's kind of losing under our old program. So important now is the 3rd year when this law goes into effect. So it'll be the 3rd year past when that occurs. Of course, if they've already identified their next home, I mean, most people, when they sell their home, they know where they're going. I guess some people are renting for a while looking for their next place, and that's why we give them this big gap. They've got to get their application in by March of the year that it runs out, okay? So I'm advising people to do it as soon as they possibly know what their situation is. If you've sold your house, you know what your portability amount is, and you've identified your next residence, don't wait. Tell them to go ahead and get it done. And it's really not hard. The math is difficult. I grant that, especially in the downsizing. And that's who it's an older couple, right? That's downsizing now that the kids are gone. They don't want to have to mess with doing the math. So that's kind of why and how we did the portability calculator. You really don't have to. You just got to know what your old house sold for, what it was taxed at, and what you paid for your new house. Those are the three facts that we need to do that. So by March of that ensuing year, you have to have established the new homestead by the January 1st, but they give you 3 months to get your application in. So I encourage people not to waste that time if possible. But that's people love to do things just before the deadline hits. So that's really, guys, what portability is all about. It's not a difficult concept, but a lot of us don't love math. I like to joke that I might have been a doctor if I'd been better at math and could stand blood. But the math gets a lot of people afraid, and somebody will do something like not do it just because they're afraid of screwing it up. Or it's better to get it done, and then somebody can fix it for you once that portability is granted. So, yes, sir.
Somebody closes right now.
Yep.
They've got to get their homestead exemption applied for right now. So they've got a 3 month.
Well, that would be for homestead, but for portability, under the current law, and I should have looked, and I don't know when the new law comes into effect. I'll try to get something out on that. They would have a whole year to get the portability application in. From not, because it's late in the year under the old law, they've got a year and 2 months if they sold and rebought now. Okay. So as promised, I think Mackenzie has a way to get in touch with all of you. We've got this portability flyer. We'll reach out to you. If you give us your logo or your brand or whatever you'd like on it, we'll have our people put that on there. So you'll have, a PDF that you can hand out to people. The only thing I ask folks is, if you're going to use our work, please leave our brand on there as well. Don't delete that, because we worked hard to get this thing put together. That was a great question, Leonard. Are there any other ones? Tammy, you still with us? I think she's muted. I'd be delighted to answer a question if you have one too, Tammy.
I'm still here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in.
I do have a question.
Awesome.
And I couldn't hear the gentleman's question in the back, but what is the calculation when you are downsizing from the larger home to the smaller home? What's that calculation?
Okay, let me grab the flyer because they're on there, and you're.
Oh, okay.
Well, can we email you the flyer? But let me say that because it's important to go over. So on the downsize, it is a percentage of the value of the old home and the Save Our Homes difference and the new home. And you have to calculate that percentage to be able to determine. So I can give you the example. We'll send you the flyer. Will you make
that makes sense.
Yeah. Like on a 250,000 that downsized to a 150, and we assumed that they had a portability amount of 100,000. It came out as 60,000 they could apply to their new one.
Okay.
So then when that meant that their new assessed value was 90,000, of course, assuming it's a married couple and they get the next 50,000 credit as well, they're down to paying taxes on $10,000. So it's really, really valuable. The first time I used the calculator, which will do that math for us without having to do the percentages, I thought there's no way. Our calculator is not working correctly, but it really does come off that much once you take the portability, assuming they've lived in the place a while. And then once you take even just the homestead exemption for a couple, and of course there are veterans exemptions and all sorts of other exemptions, which, by the way, I'm going to teach the veterans exemption in a webinar on Zoom sometime in the next few weeks. I forget when it's coming up, but that's coming up soon if that's interesting. I have a couple, and they're very concerned that his wounded combat veteran exemption wouldn't carry out with the home until when they transferred it into their revocable living trust. And it actually does, which is a beautiful thing because I think those combat wounded veterans should. And just as a little preview to my next one, we just also passed a law that exemption will stay with the spouse of the veteran after the veteran passes. December 3rd? Okay, so we're going to talk about that on December 3rd at 9 a.m. Thank you, Mackenzie, very much.
John,
And I think that's right. I think we should honor our veterans by taking care of their families after they're gone. Yes, Tammy?
the one thing that I would say, and I don't know who is in your group, but I can tell you that a lot of my work has been on the listing side of properties. And when you go to a listing appointment, then by bringing this value to them, you'll help them make a really good decision in choosing you. But take the property tax record, because Duval County or St. John's, no county wants to lose tax revenues. So many times the market value equals the assessed value. And doggone well, there's no way that could be truth. You've got a house that's worth $400,000, just market value, and their assessed value is at $400,000. So that can't be right. But if you do your market analysis, you might find that the market value should be $600,000, and you can coach those sellers to reach out to the Duval County Assessor's Office to adjust that.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I think, yes, they're trying to capture as much tax on real estate as they can to offset A, no income tax in our state, and B, that we've significantly lowered corporate taxes in our state. So they've got to keep the revenues coming somewhere, and they absolutely look at real estate. I think the tax assessors often try to find a number that's just a number that won't be challenged. And in saying that, I'm agreeing with you, Tammy, that in most instances, the number likely should be challenged or could be challenged successfully. And again, I don't do that area of practice, so this is not feathering my own bed. It's just what I think is right for our clients and customers. Any other questions?
On your
Yes.
site for the calculator that I'm sure the answer is, you do have a conversion, it's going to work with St. John's and Clay, right? Or
Yes.
is this Duval?
No, it's
Okay.
This portability calculator works in any state. The question was whether it worked in St. John's. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons we were encouraged to do this, you can find the one if you look real hard on St. John's site. Duval swears they have one, and we've never been able to find it. You can find the one in Dade County, Broward County, easily. But we made ours so that it is for any of our Northeast Florida counties. Yep, absolutely. So, Tammy, the question was just, does it apply to more than Duval? And it does. Any other questions, guys? I hope this is, yes, Leonard. Yeah.
The reason I asked is a friend of mine asked first time.
Okay.
He just bought a house.
Yes.
He was asking me about this.
Mm-hmm.
So he needs to apply again.
Okay, homestead exemption. Right. That's right. So switching, Tammy, the question's about when to apply for homestead exemption. So yes, homestead exemption does play into portability. And I actually, at our website, there's a whole another one of these that I did on homestead, because there are 4 different definitions of homestead in Florida. The one we're all talking about is the one where we establish our homestead and get the tax break, right? That's what's most important to realtors. So for homestead, to earn the homestead, you actually have to reside in the home over December 31st to January 1st. So I always advise people that they need to spend New Year's Eve in their new home, or say that they did. So you got to be home by midnight, right? Just kidding. Okay, yeah, with the champagne bottles. So, and then they have the 3 months, like your friend, to apply. But there's no reason they can't go ahead and get their application in. I would do it as soon as they've got their deed back. You know, I think they have to have their license with their address on it and maybe one utility bill or something like that. I know here, both the counties we work most in, you can do it online. Realtor didn't tell me anything, right?
I believe it's March 1st, John, right?
Yeah,
March 1st. You still have to get the and a copy of the deed back.
right, right.
I have a question,
Yes,
John,
Cheryl.
in regards to the value, it's 37.5% of the market value.
You talking about downsizing? What? Which?
It's listed
It's the one on the downside. It's the
understanding
percentage,
Right.
7.5.
37.5%.
Did I hand it back to you or did I keep yours?
Yes, you paid mine. You're ready to get surcharge.
Maybe a surcharge. All right. We could do that. We could do that. Now I got to go for my glasses. So we're looking at this one, right?
Correct.
Okay. So in the downsizing example, the reason it was the 37.5 is you have to make a comparison between the portability benefit, the value of the old house, and the value of the new house. And if you were to run the example, the numbers given in the example through that formula, you would find that that's 37.5%. It's not always going to be that. It's going to relate to the value of the old house, the value of the new house, and the amount that the portability relates to the value of the old house. Does that make sense? So okay. You had market value of 400 and the assessed value was 250, right? So if you took that as a fraction,
Right.
that would be the 37.5%.
Okay, so if the percentage is based on the difference of the market value, that's the assessed value.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you
Whatever
have
that percentage,
whatever that is for that house,
and then, yeah, and you take that percentage and apply it to either your upsize or your downside.
no, your upsize, you get 100%. If you upsize, you always get 100% of the value. So in the upsize example, you'll see the whole 150 went across, right?
Oh, I see.
Yep. And then in the downsize, it became only half of that because the $200,000 market value was half of the $400,000 market value of the old house.
Okay, so then the downside becomes the difference between the market value of this exit home compared to the market value
Of the new home, and then applied to the full, that fraction applied to the portability amount. The full portability amount, the amount that would have been available if they'd upsized.
So the moral of the story is go online and use your calculator.
Use the calculator. I did all this by hand, and I finally decided to come off the dime and hire some smart programmers to do it.
Yes.
And McKinsey, even with them, it was a few iterations before it got right, correct? Yeah. So, and I've played around with it enough to now be completely confident. Now, and I would be less than truthful than to say that I told them to go look at the one at Dade in Broward County and make ours work as well as those, right? Because those are big counties with a lot of money.
And then just to clarify, this is only a real estate transfer in the state of Florida?
Has to be Florida. It has to be homestead.
Yes.
It can't be
Homestead property.
it has to be both and a home and Florida. Either one of those is a no, is an X.
Yep.
You're right out of portability and just don't even need to talk about it anymore. Yep. Is that all the questions?
You answered a lot of them during your.
Well, could you say that into the microphone?
You answered a lot of them.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off of online.